November 27th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, racing games.
Man, I really want to play Virtua Racing. Let's do this.
Today was a very good day for me, I think.
How good was it?
Well, I gotta say,
So good.
way back,
babies.
we always laughed about, we're never gonna buy virtual console games, and Scott just bought 3,000 points, or $30 to spend on more virtual console games.
Well, because I didn't realize F-Zero X was on the virtual
F-Zero
console.
X, fuck that. Simon's Quest.
Simon's Quest, crappy, shitty game.
Simon's Quest, in my opinion,
Piece of shit.
is the third or fourth best Castlevania game ever.
Well, let's think about this.
All right, number one, obviously, is...
No, you're wrong. I can think of at least 4 better Castlevania games.
Name them, because...
All of the other Castlevania games are better than Simon's
I submit
Quest.
the Portrait of Ruin...
Okay, no, wait. There is only one Castlevania's game that is worse than Simon's Quest. That is Castlevania 64.
See, I never actually played that. I knew
Don't.
better.
Don't.
No, I'll admit, sadly, I know you'll hate me, but I didn't like the SNES one that much.
Well,
but
the SNES one is basically the same as the original one, which is different maps and better controls and stuff like that. And you can swing the chain around.
Well, I mean, the original was okay, but I didn't super like, I liked it. I owned it, and I played it, and I thought, yeah, it's a Nintendo game, but... Simon's Quest, it's kind of weird. Maybe I'm just weird that way, but Zelda 1 was an awesome game, and I loved it. But when Zelda 2 came out, and Castlevania 2, those two games I just love, and I can't... Well, I guess I could articulate exactly why, but it would take me about an hour, because those games are so wonderful.
No, I think it's just because you have bad taste and you like the fucked up games that no one else likes.
Besides, I didn't say it's the best Castlevania. I think that is possibly... Well, Symphony of the Night...
Which you haven't played?
I played bits of it. I never played through the whole thing, because I believe...
You never had a PlayStation. How could you play it?
I believe that... and a lot of people seem to back me up on this almost, that the first DS one, Dawn of Sorrow, is pretty much that game in terms of quality.
No, the first DS one was pretty good.
I really, really liked it. I liked it more than Simon's Quest.
I like the Super Nintendo one and the original first one.
I
better than
liked
that.
Castlevania 3 for the NES.
I never actually played that one.
Really?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of fun.
Maybe.
I think you'd like it.
Probably.
And not in that penny arcade, I think you're really going to like it way.
All right.
But yeah, Simon's Quest was one of the few video games in my life that, as a kid, actually scared me. The game was just so...
You weren't scared towards the end of Zelda 1 there?
I was scared, but in this more like... nervous, something's gonna happen, this is weird, I'm worried that like Ganon's gonna appear suddenly and I'm gonna die, this music is scaring me, or when I was in the graveyard the first time, but no, or like Zelda 2 scared me too, when you get across to like the weird, like when you take the raft across, and you're in that place with the enemies you can't kill, and suddenly everything's dangerous, and there aren't so many villages, and everything's scary, but
yeah.
Castlevania 2 was scary in this kind of creepy, a little bit fucked up, weird things that were never explained to you by the rulebook would just happen. You'd run across these scrolls that said cryptic, scary things and then disappeared. You didn't know why. You could equip Dracula's heart or claw or eyeball and different things would happen, but it was never quite clear exactly why they happened. And that one time the game glitched and all those bodies started moving in the sky and
Yeah, okay.
that game scared me as a kid. Also, it kind of bothered me how everyone in the towns was just kind of fucked up and scary. And every time I walked into one of those places where those merchantmen were, or even worse, when I had to use holy water to break the bricks and go down into like the sub basement to find them, everyone's wearing gray robes with scary masks. And they always kind of came at me. It's not like they walked over. Do you want to buy something? They came at you. The first time I walked into a store, I ran away because I thought it was a bad guy that I couldn't kill.
Yeah. That's basically the thing that I didn't like about Simon's Quest is all the stupid store stuff. It's like, I should just be walking to the right whipping things. That's Castlevania.
I liked having to
walking
figure stuff
to the right
out.
and whipping.
There
was no figuring out. It was worse than the average Nintendo logic. It was just complete random, complete nonsense bullshit.
It wasn't nonsense at all. Like
in the first town, the guy says, "Want to buy a crystal?" And I'm like, "What the fuck do I need a crystal for? I don't know."
Well, there's someone else in the town who tells you what the crystal does.
Yeah, and I didn't
It will
find that
show you
person.
the way in Berkeley Manor. You know what? You go to Berkeley Manor.
I didn't even know there was a Berkeley Manor or anything like that.
That's the first the mansion, the first level. And you know what? You
I
get
didn't even
there.
know where the first level was. I walk out of town. It's a horrible, dangerous wilderness, and I just get killed by wolfmen in the night.
Well, that's just because you suck. It's a terrible night to have a curse, but
Game
at
sucks.
least the dawn. Something I forget what it says.
Game sucks. You
has
wanna do-
vanquished the horrible night.
Game sucks. You want to do news?
Game's awesome.
So-
All right, so in the news,
There's a reason Angry Video Game Nerd agrees with me.
we'll have to do a show on this. Anyway, in the news, there's been a bunch of articles along these lines, but I'll talk about this one. The PSP Slim, which is the new, better PSP, and I kind of like it, has sold over 1 million in Japan.
All right.
Now, you know, people are arguing left and right, like, yeah, see, the PSP isn't dead. Ha ha ha, the PSP is going to win. And that's not what's happening because Nintendo expects to sell 28 million more DSs.
The only reason they can't sell more DS is because everyone already has one. It's like, who's left to sell a DS to? I don't know. We can start advertising that people need 2 DSs.
Well,
or they'll make a DS. As soon as everyone in Japan has a DS Lite, they're going to make the DS Lite so that everyone rebuys.
Or they'll make the successor to the DS.
Yeah, probably.
What about the third pillar? I thought there was going to be a Game Boy.
That was just the backup plan in case the DS didn't go over well.
Man, you know, people always rag on Sony for outright lying about Rumble and all the crap they did with the PS3 and everything, but people forget that Nintendo had this whole lie about, third pillar that they just kind of swept under the rug and pretended they never said.
It would have been true if the DS didn't do so well. If the DS didn't do so well, we would already, in our hands, have Game Boy Advance advances.
Remember, we weren't sure. Remember when we bought the DS, our rationale was either it's going to be the best thing ever, and we'll have it opening day, or it's going to be the Virtual Boy, and how cool will it be to own the Virtual Boy again 10 years from now?
Yep, that was my rationale, buying the DS on launch day, and I guess I won. My gamble was correct, was it not? I mean...
Yeah, but the PSP, they expect to sell 10 million by the end of the fiscal year, and Nintendo expects to sell 28 million DSs, I think just in Japan. Mm-hmm. I didn't even read the article, but...
Way to go.
Well, the point here, one, the reason the PSP Slim is selling is that, one, Japan does have a lot of loyalty towards Sony and Nintendo, you know, Japanese companies, but two, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which I didn't even really realize came out, is on the PSP. So, of course...
Yeah, there's that giant PSP that I see every day that's in the city. It's like a billboard, and there's a giant PSP on it.
Yep.
And I always see Japanese RPGs on it. So, and they definitely look Square styling.
And you know, Japan,
Square Enix styling.
anytime a JRPG comes out, I don't care what system it is, it'll sell almost as many as the number of copies of that
You
game.
could come out with a new console in Japan tomorrow, and that console, all it does is play one Dragon Quest game that isn't available on any of their console, and charge $500 for the console and $100 for the only game on the console. And you'll have people lining up to spend $600 to buy your console.
Now, despite the fact that there have been a lot of, shall we say, epic fails along the way with the PSP, including early games that had, I don't know, you had to sit there for 10 minutes while it loaded and then the battery died before you could play.
UMD movies?
UMDs, Sony just kind of said, yeah, never mind about that, which is probably good. But
They should say, yeah, never mind with the Blu-rays.
I still have no desire to get a PSP yet, just because it's too much money and
The only reason
the
PSP, I would get one just for the podcasting feature, but it's too big, so no.
Well, maybe if they make the PSP Slim.
It would also have to be PS3, not a gigantic screen, which I don't think they're going to do because that's sort of the selling point.
But my real news, the point I want to make, is that the PSP did not win. The PSP has no chance of winning and never did. But the PSP has pulled off something amazing. It is, as far as I can see, not counting the Wonder Swan and all that Japanese stuff. In the rest of the world, I think it is the only time we have ever had a second place in the portable gaming market.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the history, and it's been Game Boy.
It wasn't like the Game Boy and then like, oh, well, in second place, the Game Gear's doing okay. It was the Game Boy and the superior Game Gear. Superior in the sense that it was better technically, much like the PSP is better technically. I mean, it was much better hardware. If you discount the fact that the batteries lasted about 6 minutes.
Yeah, but in general, it was Nintendo, and then everyone else, not just, tries and isn't as good as Nintendo. It's everyone else fails. The Game Gear died. The Neo Geo Pocket Color died.
The Lynx
the
was
Lynx
stillborn.
died. It's sort of like the metal. The
No, I
Game
think
Gear
it's-
tried to kill the Game Boy, but it was smitten down to the ground. You can't kill the Game Boy, which is now the DS.
And you still can. Nothing's Nintendo. I mean, people always never forget the fact. Never forget. Nintendo has pretty much had a complete monopoly on portable gaming for as long as Nintendo has had an entry in the portable gaming market. And the fact that the PSP did not get destroyed completely is amazing. So I give that system and even Sony some credit for that.
Yeah, but I have a feeling, though, that the DS is going to be around for... People are talking, the Game Boy, from the original Game Boy to the GBA, right? Which you can count that as one platform. 15 years of dominance. We're not talking dominance just portable.
Years on the Erie Canal.
We're talking dominance in terms of #1 gaming console, period, not just portable. So
that's-
DS is 3 years old. You can expect 12 more years of DS in some form.
Because, I mean, think, it was the Game Boy, which had a screen that consisted of two colors, dark brown and light brown.
In fact, the DS, if you compare how the DS is doing 3 years in to how the Game Boy was doing 3 years in, the DS is doing better than the Game Boy did. So it might be 20 years of DSing for us.
The Game Boy, with its brown and darker brown screen.
It was green and
It wasn't
spinach.
green. It was this yellowish kind of brown and
Yeah,
then a
it
really
was
dark,
it
not
depended.
quite black.
Spinachy, green, brownish, blah,
It
whatever.
wasn't green. It was kind of yellowish.
Anyway,
it
depended on your contrast setting.
they never really improved it. I mean, the Game Boy Color was barely an improvement. It was pretty much the same goddamn thing.
I could do a whole show on the Game Boy Color.
Well, let's do a whole show on the Game Boy, like the evolution of the Game Boy.
All right.
Or portable gaming.
No.
Anyway, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
What else am I gonna say?
So, I got a story here, and the headline on Joystiq is Nintendo Dead Last in Greenpeace Guide to Greener Electronics, right? Now,
Wait. Why are we talking about Greenpeace?
I don't want to talk about Greenpeace.
I mean, environmentalism aside, Greenpeace is nothing but a bunch of wackos.
Well, Greenpeace is most of Greenpeace, for the most part, is well-meaning people, but the organization is generally misguided and it does terrorist things and other ineffective
That's
things.
why
and other
the
crazy things
founder
and-
said, wow, you guys went nuts and quit.
Yes, but anyway, not talking about Greenpeace. I'm mostly going to talk about the video game journalism going on here, right?
Oh, wait a minute. What you are implying is that there is a such thing as video game journalism.
No, in fact, I'm going to provide ample evidence that there is no such thing. All right, so Greenpeace did this little study thing. I guess they do it every year or something like that. And what they do is they pick the 10 largest consumer electronics companies, and then they give them a score based on criteria of how environmentally friendly they are, right? And because Nintendo grew so much this year, for the first time, they're on the list, as they're the 10th largest or one of the top 10 consumer electronics companies in terms of size in the world. So Greenpeace scored them for the first time ever, okay? And they scored 0 points out of, however many points you could get, which is the worst score you could get. And, yeah. So all the games journalism websites, let me read from Joystiq here. It ranks actually not top 10, top 18 manufacturers. But anyway, according to the report, Nintendo has no timeline for toxic blah, blah, blah. The console is birthed from a foul process mired in substances like brominated flame retardants. So, So Joystiq says that according to Greenpeace, the Wii is made with brominated flame retardants, right? Let's actually read the PDF from Greenpeace. Let me go scan around here. Hold on. Come on, PDF.
I'm expecting a stellar piece of objective, rational, well thought out, and well researched journalism. Are you
Okay,
going to
this
provide that to
PDF
me?
really doesn't want to scroll properly. Awesome.
Is this going to be, legitimate journalism? Is this going to be somewhat objective? Is this going to be real?
Okay, well, it's basically all it is a chart with some text in it. There's not like a big essay written here, right? So it says here at the top, it says, let's see. Timeline for BFR phase out. Nintendo got a score of 0, right? That's brominated flame retardant, right?
Is that good or bad?
0 is bad.
Okay.
Then it says down here at the bottom, timeline for BFR phase out. No policy on use of BFRs. Nintendo scored zeros across the board, not because they do anything environmentally unfriendly, because they provide no information about it whatsoever. Nintendo, you gotta remember, this is a company that makes video games and tries to make as much profit making video games as it can, and it doesn't think about anything else. They don't, you see other companies like giving to charities here and there, and some of those things are good, and some of those things are just for marketing, but do good anyway, and some things are just for show, and whatever. Nintendo, if you haven't noticed, doesn't do any of that stuff. Nintendo makes video games and does only video games. They don't waste their resources or... Well, whether it's a waste is, up to you, but... Well, they don't spend their resources on other projects to look good in other ways.
Not anymore.
Right. However, I have, with my keen journalistic brain, I have discovered something else.
Oh, have you?
Oh, yes. See, so first of all, Joystiq has it wrong. Joystiq says, GreenPeace says, that Nintendo is the most horrible, evil, polluting the environment company. Reality, GreenPeace only says that Nintendo provides no information. That's why they get zeros, because... Basically, I guess according to GreenPeace, if you don't, have a whole website and a whole task force at your company devoted to environmentalism, then you got to be evil, right? You're the worst. There's a link in the GreenPeace PDF that says more information. It takes you to the Nintendo US corporate FAQ. And at the bottom of the Nintendo US corporate FAQ, it says, what does Nintendo do to help protect the environment? And it says, we recycle paper in the office, we don't use colored paper, we buy recycled paper towels, blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't say anything about brominated flame retardants or manufacturing or anything like that. You know why it doesn't? See, this is why I'm smarter than GreenPeace and Joystiq. You know why it doesn't say that?
Why doesn't it, Scott?
Because this is the Nintendo of America website. Nintendo of America doesn't manufacture anything. They're just an office. If they had gone to the Japanese website, I don't read Japanese, but there may have been some information. Maybe. I'm not saying there is. I'm saying they didn't go to the Japanese website.
I'm shocked that a journalist, a video game journalist,
someone who gets paid to do this, unlike me, doing it for free.
And
okay, I mean, GreenPeace.
I can't feign my outrage anymore.
No surprise for GreenPeace, but the video game journalist, the shock, right? So basically, Nintendo's getting this bad PR because they don't provide information that GreenPeace thinks that everyone should provide, and video game journalists didn't actually read the thing that GreenPeace wrote or research it in any way whatsoever. I don't know what else. Oh, that's one more thing I have to say about this. Whether you can say about, what, I don't even know. Nintendo's manufacturing might be horribly poisonous with toxic chemicals. Who knows? I don't know anything about it. There's no information either way. And that's why they got this bad score, because there's no positive or negative information, right? But apparently people are just believing the worst possible situation when there's no information either way. We do know one thing about Nintendo and their environmental impact. We know that Nintendo makes two consoles. It's pretty much all they make is the DS and the Wii. And we know that their competitors, the PS3 and the 360. And we know that the 360 and the PS3, the amount of electricity that either one of those things uses is about, 4 times, 5 times what the Wii uses. So regardless of Nintendo's manufacturing process, who knows about it? It's a complete mystery to us. Nintendo's products using a lot less energy to provide more entertainment than the competitors. So take that.
Things of the day. All right, so way back in the day, before, the DS and before even the Game Boy Advance and before there were flashcards easily available and all that, one thing I wanted in my life more than anything was the ability to play regular Nintendo and Super Nintendo games on the go. Like, that was the dream of my childhood.
Well, you could, starting with the Game Boy Color, they released, because the Game Boy couldn't really play a lot of, couldn't do an NES quality game, even though some came close, like Kirby's Dream Land.
Or Final Fantasy Legend 2.
Right, but the Game Boy Color, you could play Mario 1 on it. In fact, that's the best implementation of Mario 1 there is before the Virtual Console, and maybe equal. And then the Game Boy Advance, they just released straight-up NES games for it. And even better than NES games, like Super Nintendo games on it. Better than Super Nintendo games sometimes. So, it happened, mostly.
But a lot of people used to try and make kind of cobbled together solutions, like get a little screen,
yeah, there's that guy. I think he works with Engadget now. He basically takes video game consoles and then he sort of rebuilds them in portable versions. Like he has a PlayStation you can just hold in your hands.
Well, now I think too little too late applies, but there is now a Famicom adapter for the DS. So you can plug this into your DS, plug an original gigantic Famicom game into it. A game that I will point out is pretty much bigger than your DS. And then play it on your DS.
Wow, you could just get the flash cart and
Well, I'll
with
say
the
one
emulator.
thing. That gets points for being retro, and it gets points for being perfect, and it gets points for being kinda awesomely useless.
Yeah, it's very
I
impractical.
mean, the one thing it does give you is that at least it's legal. There is no way you can be faulted for having the Famicom cartridge and playing it on your DS this way.
I guess, yeah. I guess that's legal.
I just wonder how much battery it uses.
I hope it has its own batteries.
Yeah.
It's already impractical enough. You might as well make it a little bit,
Oh, it'll play American games too.
Oh, okay. I didn't
And
know
it
that.
has TV out. So
I know it has TV out. That's not bad. So you could actually sort of replace your Famicom if it broke.
Just reading that, it might be worth it to get it because we have two non-functional Nintendos.
If you want to do that, you could just buy a functioning Nintendo, like that NESX thing.
Or I could buy this.
But this is stupider.
I don't know. I kind of like the style of it. It kind of looks like an old Famicom.
It's all you.
It's all, red and white.
I think there's more practical solutions.
It's got a speaker.
Even if you're using the TV out, there are more practical solutions. Many more. Anyway, my thing of the day, right? So, the old Fist of the North Star. Oh, yeah. They're making a DS game. So, the DS game is going to be sort of like an interactive manga where you read a Fist of the North Star manga on
And
your
then
DS.
I guess you play effectively Elite Beat agents on someone's chest.
Like, it'll stop when there's a fight, and you'll basically have to play the equivalent of Elite Beat agents to sort of...
someone's
That's
chest.
what I gathered from the screenshots of the game.
Thus causing the person to turn the shotgun on themselves, because that's how that works.
That is how that works. So, the website for...
Or walk backwards off a cliff crying the whole time.
Right, so if you go to this website, which is the official Japanese website for Hokuto no Ken DS, right? My thing of the day is not this game, it's this website. Not anything in the website itself, but if you load this website in your browser, something very interesting will happen that is quite humorous. Make sure you have your JavaScripts enabled.
Yeah, sadly, Scott sent this to me like, oh my god, check this out. And I watch it. Oh, it's that Fist of the North Star game I already knew about. I'm so paranoid about ads, and I turn off so much stuff that nothing happened for me.
Yeah.
And as a result, I totally missed it.
Well, it happened for me, and it's pretty awesome.
Right. So tonight, we're not talking about Fist of the North Star. We're talking about racing games.
In general.
Very broad, very simple. We're not going to get into details.
Racing video games. We're not talking about, like, Formula Day here.
We're also not talking about the Power Pad.
No, we're not talking about
I want to talk about the Power Pad.
Talking about vehicle racing games, mostly cars or car-like things.
Yeah, because
Karts,
not Diddy Kong, because that game sucks.
hovercrafts. Diddy Kong is not bad.
It's a terrible game.
You suck.
It's not fun.
You suck.
I'll get into why it's
At least
not
it's
fun.
a racing game.
But yeah, we'll probably do shows in the future on specific racing games in a lot of detail. I'm sure we could do a whole show just on the Ridge Racer series, or just on...
We haven't played enough Ridge Racer, I think.
I've played 1 to death, to where I think I'm perfect at it. I've played 7 once on a broken machine, or 6, or whichever one that was.
I think it was 6.
I don't know. It's
Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer!
All right. So, yeah, what is a racing game?
I don't think we need to get it there.
Because I do. I actually have a point that I want to make, that some games you think are racing games are not racing games.
Oh, I see what you're doing there. All right, go ahead.
Well, in my eyes, a racing game is a video game where...
There's a bunch of black cars on one side, a bunch of white
Right.
cars on the other. Nah.
No, it's a game... Oh, man, that was bad.
It was bad enough to where it kind of hit you after the fact.
It's basically a game that is testing your skill of, maneuvering something along a path, right? And that is the skill. It is...
Wait a minute. By that logic, that Carnival make the ring go across the magnetic snake without touching anything is a racing game.
Yeah, in a way.
I'm going to go with a much more general thing and say it is a game of piloting some form of vehicle along a course, attempting to get there to the end faster than other people.
That's the typical metaphor that's used, but I mean, if I change the theme of the game to be like a snake on a branch on a tree trying to get to the end of the branch.
Then the snake is now my vehicle. I'm trying to get
well,
there
the ring
before-
is my vehicle, and the spirally thing at the carnival
with
is my
some
track.
sort of steering wheel or stick.
All right, anyway, you get the idea. The skills being tested are the ability to stay on course, going as fast as possible, you know?
Well, I think a lot also the ability to know the limits of something and then to push those limits.
Yes. And, you know, many games fall into this category. For example, Gran Turismo, racing game. Forza, racing game.
Stunts 4D.
Yep, RC Pro-Am, racing game. F-Zero, racing game.
What about, say, Mario Kart?
I'm going to say that every Mario Kart game, except for Mario Kart for the Game Boy, Mario Kart Super Circuit for the Game Boy Advance is a racing game. Every other Mario Kart game I have played, the Super Nintendo one, the N64 one especially, Double Dash I haven't played enough of, so I can't say.
I'd say the DS one is pretty much a racing game. The only thing is, you basically make the car go in a Flintstones way with your finger.
Yeah, kind of. But especially the N64, at least, in fact, I'll just say, the N64 one, Mario Kart 64, is not a racing game. It is not a racing game. It may appear to be a racing game. However, while there is a racing element to the game, that is not the primary aspect of the game. The primary aspect of Mario Kart 64 is luck with the items and cheating. And how well
the cheating.
And how well you race and how well you stay on course and how much you push the limit of your cart matters a lot less than what items you get, or if the AI just decides to cheat and fuck you, or if you use a secret on the track as opposed to, you know, just going faster.
Right, so what's your favorite racing game of all time?
Oh, God.
Because I have 3 answers.
I got a few answers.
I can either go based on enjoyment, testing of skill, or nostalgia. I have a different one for all 3.
I got 4 answers. Ready?
Oh, do you?
Okay, 4 equals. There are 4 equals for me. Personal, right? Equal number 1 would be F-Zero X, which I just downloaded. Because F-Zero X, I don't want to talk all about F-Zero because I want to do a whole F-Zero show. It feels like every episode we talk about whole shows we're going to do and then we never do them.
Remind us.
Yeah. So, the thing about F-Zero is that it just, more than any other game, gives you this insane sensation of speed. And it's not just because the speedometer goes up to like 2,000 kilometers an hour. It's because the game actually makes you feel like you're going 2,000 kilometers an hour. And you're like racing on cylinders and in pipes and upside down and flipping. And it's just ludicrous. But it's actually a racing game. And you're actually, like, you're managing your boost energy. And you're managing crashing into people or not crashing into people. And there's actually a lot to F-Zero, and it's really fast and really rapid fire and intense, and it's just about, I can't really think of a way to make a better racing game in terms of fun, at least.
It depends on what kind of fun.
There are different kinds of fun, but in terms of a racing game that concentrates only on the racing, and as fun as it can be. That's what it does. Is F-Zero. In fact, F-Zero GX does the same thing, where it takes the racing game, the core of it, and it just polishes it to be as shiny as it can and doesn't add any fluff.
See, I guess along those kinds of lines, in terms of just sheer enjoyment, I would have to go with the Initial D arcade game.
Yeah, the Initial D arcade game, at least version 3, which is better than 2 and 1.
Version 4 is so much better than 3, 2, and 1 combined. Oh my God.
I can believe that, but I haven't played 4, so I can't say. But I can totally believe it, because if 2 was better than 1 and 3 was better than 2 and 1, it follows that 4 would be better.
What really helps is the widescreen flat panels.
That would help quite a bit.
And also, you know, in like 1, 2, and 3, the steering wheel was a little it felt kind of flimsy, like the force feedback wasn't great.
Yeah, the force feedback was not as firm as it is on, say, I just remembered the best racing game ever. So, yes, the best racing game ever by far, above every other racing game ever, is Virtua Racing. In fact, better than that is Virtua Racing 2 by Sega, which is incredibly hard to play because it's only like 1 machine or 2 machines.
That's a fucking good game.
Virtua Racing. Plus, Virtua Racing is the best steering wheel ever.
I will just say,
it was also the first 3D racing game with, used polygonal graphics, and it was the first racing game that where you could change the camera view with the 3 view changing buttons.
I remember when I was driving,
racing game,
I would just sit there, moving through all the views because that was just so cool to me as a kid.
That was Virtua Racing 1. Virtua Racing 2 is infinitely better, but is impossible to play because what system could you get it on? Almost nothing. I think you could play it on maybe like the 32X CD or the Saturn or something like that, and I don't even know if that came out for real. I think you can get like a bootleg of it. I'm not sure. But you could play it in the arcade on a giant 8-seat machine, or was it a 10-seat machine, where each seat was actually a giant model, Indy car. And freaking, there was one at Disney World in Epcot Center in like, the innovation place. And I had to pay like $5 to play it, waiting in line there. And I played it once. So that's how hard it is to play that game. But that is the best racing game there is. It had the force feedback wheel for the first time. That was amazing. And in fact, the best force feedback wheel ever. It had freaking it had everything.
Right. So Initial D4, the steering wheel is a rock. It's wonderful. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
But in terms of Initial D just being fun though, those games, they pump you up with the music and it's just this feeling of I am fighting with someone in my car. And the fact that it's set up where you duel other people sitting
Initial
next to
D
you.
definitely has the multiplayer racing, because other games with the multiplayer racing is not so good. Like you have the checkpoints and there's other AI cars in the track.
Pretty much every one of those, gimmicky, there's 8 arcade machines lined up and 8 people all racing in an arcade. They're all terrible games for the most part. They're not racing games. They're just random.
Except for
Cruising World.
Virtual Racing 2.
Because I was going to say Cruising World sucks.
I like Cruising World, but it's not. I can't say it's really a racing game.
I also like Cruising World.
It's not a good racing game.
But it's not a very good game. I consider it, at best, a guilty pleasure.
But I really like it. I played it a lot. I played it probably more than anything else, at least in the arcade.
I think the reason I played it so much is that most of the arcades I went to, it was just the best racing game there. Didn't mean it was good. It was just they didn't have Ridge Racer.
Yep.
I would like to give a nod to Ridge Racer 1 because I didn't appreciate that game when I was younger. Because I didn't know much about drifting and all that cool, like, oh my god, he's drifting his car.
It was definitely ahead of its time. It was like, the Initial D class of racing game before that was really popular anywhere.
Because I'd play it and be like, what the fuck? My car spins out all the time. I don't get it. This sucks. But now, I guess we used to go to University of Rochester because RIT, for being such a geeky school, had the shittiest on-campus arcade you've ever seen. It was awful. They teased us for 2 years, we're gonna get a DDR machine. It's coming. We've got one any day now. And finally, one day, it arrived. And we walk in, and what do we see? Not only is it a pump-it-up machine, but it's a broken pump-it-up machine. And in fact, it was the same broken pump-it-up machine that we had been playing at another arcade, and then it had broken, and then that arcade went out of business.
They were probably both renting from the same place.
Yeah, but God. Anyway, so we go to the University of Rochester, which had an awesome arcade.
A 5th mix DDR machine.
It had a 5th mix DDR, and it had that puzzle whatever game.
It had a Neo Geo cabinet.
Yep, and it had Ridge Racer 1.
Yep.
Also, it had girls, unlike the RIT arcade. But, mostly because we brought them. But anyway, so I couldn't play DDR all the time. I had to stop every now and then, playing 8, 9, 10 sets in a row, or sometimes there was a line. So I'd always just go to this Ridge Racer 1 machine. And I played it so much that I set the ghost, and then I kept beating the ghost, and I love that game.
Yeah, Ridge Racer 1's real good. Let's see, what else is really good?
If we go for nostalgia, I'm going to have to go with Stunts 4D Racing.
I'm going to go RC Pro-Am on the nostalgia.
Oh, RC Pro-Am. That's also kind of drifty.
The second one actually is better.
It is. But even the first one was, compared to other racing games out on that system at that time, RC Pro-Am was amazing.
I think the thing about RC Pro-Am is that you sort of had it was the only game that got the car customizing right. It's like you collected stuff on the track and you won races in order to get money to buy more stuff for your car and get more, and you would upgrade the car to go faster.
Because there was that other game, I forget what it was called, my brother was really good at it, where you drove the trucks or whatever, and it was 4-player with the 4-score, and you upgraded the cars. There was an arcade game too, but it wasn't that great.
No. But was that just out off-road?
Yeah, something like that. I forget.
No, the RC Pro definitely had the car customizing going on correctly, and the game itself was really fun. You drove around this track. It was the only racing game that worked well with the overhead view because the controls are right.
Well,
a lot of those other overhead view racing games just didn't have the controls that worked.
Well,
properly.
they just didn't get it. A lot of people made overhead racing games with absolute control. So up is always up and down is always down instead of relative control. And let me tell you, that is not a good decision.
No, it's not.
That was evolution worked, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, like off-road, freaking use the steering wheel in the arcade to play a game where you could see the whole track at the same time. Bad idea.
Yes. Good God.
Yeah.
But that wasn't as bad as absolute control. Up, up, down, down.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Actually, you know what a really good racing game was for the NES? That bootleg Micro Machines game.
That was okay.
It was really fun, and it was pretty good racing. The only problem with it was that being bootleg, it was kind of glitchy. And I mean really glitchy. But that was a pretty good game, all things considered.
I don't know. Who can go without saying pole position? I love me some pole position.
I don't actually like pole position.
I actually do like pole position.
I had it. It was the first game I got when I got the Atari 7800.
I especially
pole position
like
2.
Yeah, the sit-down arcade machine of pole position 1 is by far the best. I mean, it's straightforward. It's simple. It's step on the gas, don't hit anything, and everything will be cool.
But if you want to play an old school racing game that's kind of fun, find a cracked copy. I've never seen a legitimate copy of Stunts 4D Racing. You'll probably find one cracked by KillFit, because that's whoever it was who cracked the one that was
I'm going to check
installed
on the internets right now.
It was installed on every single computer at my middle school, and I brought it on a disc to my high school and installed it on every computer at my high school. And I played the ever-living fuck out of that game. I made 1 million maps for it. That game was just amazing, especially considering it basically had crappy digital control. And it was one of those, there's loops and jumps, and it wasn't terribly realistic, but it made up for that by being incredibly fun and incredibly skill-based.
Yeah, that's something I think deserves talking about, is that a lot of racing games, they're pretty much, if it's a real racing game, it's impossible to play with digital control. Digital control means that all the only controls you have are, accelerate, not accelerate, brake, not brake, left, not left, right, not right. Those are the only controls you have. To have a proper racing game, you need to have analog controls, which can be like accelerate a little bit more, accelerate a little bit more, accelerate all the way, brake a little bit more, brake a little bit less, turn left a little bit, turn left a lot, turn left even more.
There were games that did, with digital controls, they achieved a lot. Stunts, despite being digital, there was a lot of skill involved, and it was a great game. And honestly, I'd love to see a modern racing game that's like that, where it's completely non-realistic, but yet really self-consistent, and as a result, really, 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 really fun.
Yeah, there are a lot of... It's possible to make a racing game that is fun and playable with digital control, but a proper racing game needs analog control. It's just...
Well, let's talk a bit about realism, because Initial D is such a fun game, but it's not realistic worth a shit.
It's realistic if you consider Initial D the anime to be the real world.
Well, it's realistic up to a point. The cars will lose traction about as a real car would. The problem is, once you have lost traction and you're drifting, the game doesn't make you countersteer, which means in the real world, if you tried to drift around a corner the way you did in Initial D, you would die.
Yeah, the thing is, Initial D, once you're drifting, the car basically magically goes around the corner properly. Like, you drifted, awesome!
No, I gotta say, in Initial D4, I think it's more realistic, because I tried my strategy of gas all the way, suddenly I downshift, and then, blah, blah, countersteer, blah, 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 and I just fishtailed and crashed into the wall every time.
Yeah, well, the most realistic racing game I've ever played was NASCAR Silicon Alley Motor Speedway, which, I don't know if you know about this, but they set these up. I don't know if there still are any set up, but there was one set up in the Palisades Mall when the Palisades Mall was still crazy and malls still had animatronics and stuff, in the heyday of the 90s. And basically, it was 8 full-size NASCAR cars. They obviously didn't have engines in them, but they were cars. And you would get in the car and put your seatbelt on and everything. And the car was on a pneumatic lift. And there was like a big projector screen in front of you. And I forget if there was like a rear view mirror or if there was just a projector just projected the rear view mirror onto the screen. But the car would move. You actually had real pedals and a stick and everything. And you had this projector screen in front of you that had the best graphics of the day. And it was basically a simulator, but it was a game, and you paid like $15 for one race against the 7 other people who paid $15, and it was incredibly realistic and absolutely not fun at all.
See, honestly, I really, really enjoy like crazily realistic racing games, and even though they're very difficult and I'll probably crash a lot.
No, because I actually, of course I crashed a lot, at first, but then I got the hang of it, and once I got the hang of it, it was still not fun.
Well, I think it'd be more fun if it wasn't NASCAR. Imagine F1, perfectly realistic. Because the thing is, I enjoy games like Initial D because they're really, really, really fun. And I get to drift and be all Takahashi Ryosuke. And I also really like completely unrealistic, stupid racing games like Stunts. Because I get to drive in a loop and fly off over the plastic cows. But, when it comes to an ultra-realistic racing game with perfectly realistic controls, I mean, my ideal racing game would be exactly a car, and it's exactly like driving a car, except if I crash, I don't lose a bunch of money and or die. Because getting good at a game like that directly translates into being good at real driving. It's like all that time turns me into a real good race car driver, and I really like go-karts and race car driving.
Yeah, go-karts. There are a lot of PC, accurate racing simulators, or car simulators.
They don't do it for me.
Well, it's sort of like that same culture of flight simulators, and I think one of the popular ones is called Live for Speed. I'm not sure if it's free or not, but you can go get it and try. I've never tried it, so I don't know if it's good or not. But, that's sort of like, if you're one of those crazy people who, loves flight simulators like X-Plane, and you like racing, or you can try to get Live for Speed, see how it goes.
See, I think my problem is that, Gran Turismo games, you'd think I'd like them. Oh, they're really realistic, and they keep getting more realistic and better. But most people I see play these games with a controller. And to me, the idea of taking a game and making it so realistic and then controlling it in the most unrealistic way possible just removes all the fun from the game.
Yeah, I would be willing to
Also, I like realism in terms of driving. I don't care about the car. I don't want to get money and buy the blah, blah, blah brakes instead of the blah, blah, blah brakes. I care about that so little.
Yeah, not at all.
It's like when you wanted to join the race car driving club at RIT. You were like, can I just be really good at driving the car and drive the car? And they were like, no, you also have to do the other stuff.
Yeah, well, it was sort of like RIT had a Formula SAE team where they make a little car and then, they race it. And it's sort of like, it's mostly an engineering thing, Can we make a better Formula car than the other people in the competition? It's sort of like educational level Formula, whatever. And I went to those people because I think they were technically the largest club on campus. And I found out who the person was my freshman year. And I said, hey,
Well, technically, the largest club on campus was the club that consisted of anyone in a club, but
I
digress.
Right.
Stupid RIT.
Yeah, but I went to those people, and I was just like, hey, are you the Formula SAE, whatever? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what does it take to be able to drive that car? They're like, well, you got to join our club, and you got to, spend years, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, I'm really only interested in driving. I know nothing about engineering, and I don't care. And they're like, oh, well, eh. And I'm like, huh? Well, I guess if I was Michael Schumacher in disguise, you'd be SOL now, wouldn't you?
But I'm going to say it straight up. Playing those games, I don't see the appeal of playing a game like Gran Turismo with a controller. It's analog, yeah. It's not a steering wheel with a gas pedal and a brake.
Well, some people do go out and buy the steering wheel and the gas pedal and the brake.
There's where I get into that. Because, okay, I've never seen a home steering wheel and brake other than custom things people have made or things that are stupidly expensive that is even close to realistic enough to justify playing that game.
Yeah.
Because if I can't translate my skills from a perfectly realistic or nearly realistic driving game into the real world pretty directly, I feel like I'm just wasting my time, and I'd rather just go play Initial D.
Yeah, I'd rather go play a fun racing game of some kind, or F-Zero, or even Excite Truck. I mean, the thing with people are thinking about using the Wiimote for steering wheels, and it's not a bad idea. I mean, it kind of works.
Why does everyone do it wrong?
What?
Everyone does it wrong. It should be exactly like Excite Truck.
Yeah, well, it should be exactly like Excite Truck. The problem is it's not with a steering wheel, right? The way the Wiimote works is relative. You know, it gets the acceleration, right? So it's like if I turn the Wiimote to the left, it knows that I accelerated to the left, so it turns the car to the left. But then it assumes that I'm still at the left until it feels an acceleration to the right, And it's sort of like I really need that let go of the steering wheel and it recenters itself kind of stuff going on. It's better than a gamepad by a zillion, but it's still not a steering wheel.
Also, there's the issues of I need pedals and all that stuff, and I need to be able to see out the sides, and I need to be able to just look into my rearview mirror. And the thing that even if I get all that perfect, I feel like one of the most important parts of being a good driver when it comes to racing, or, not the kind of driving you do on the freeway, is actually feeling the road and the car and the G-forces.
Yep.
I mean, I think I'm better at it's not like I've ever taken my car racing. But I think if I were, trying to get away from the police, which is not entirely out of the realm in terms of where my life might end up, I feel like I would be better at trying to drive my real crappy car, as in it's real, my real physical car, and it's crappy. It's not real crappy. I feel like I could take that around a racetrack a lot better than I could take a super fancy car around a racetrack in some realistic game.
Yeah,
because I can feel, I feel when
most of the time when I'm playing a game like Gran Turismo, right? What's the skill what is the thing that you have to do to be good at Gran Turismo? Is to know. It's the same thing you have to know to be good at F1 in real life. Is how fast can you take the turn without killing yourself? Because you have
what
a car.
Is the limit? How close can I get to that limit?
Right.
Knowing that the closer you get to the limit, the closer you are to dying.
Any car that goes and isn't broken can go straight, without worry about crashing. You just hold the gas down and you hold the wheel straight and you're good to go, unless the car itself fails, right? But turning, if you're going 100 miles an hour around, a 30-degree radius turn, no car has the traction capable to do that. If you're holding down the gas pedal, you have to slow down, right, to a speed at which the tires will not lose traction while going around the turn.
Now, not only that, all right, so let's say you slow down exactly enough to make the turn. Like, you have slowed down the minimum. You are going at the maximum possible speed around the corner. That's the maximum speed, meaning if anything changes, if there's a pebble,
if your tire wears out a little bit, because this is the second lap, and
you'll immediately crash.
If the temperature goes up a little bit, or temperature goes down, decreasing traction.
Because there's no margin. So most of actual racing is just knowing the margin between crashing and not crashing, and knowing your car, and knowing what's going to happen. And it comes down to knowing where the limits are, and choosing how much you are willing to risk on every corner.
Yep, so knowing those things is step one. Step two is feeling those things, right? And sort of like if I drive my car, right, which is a normal street car, you can feel the G-forces acting on your body if you go around a turn too quickly. And if G-forces are acting on your body when you're taking my car around a turn, it's not a race car. If you're feeling G-forces when you're going around a turn, the car is probably going to lose traction, especially if there's snow or rain or anything, and that's not good. So being able to feel that G-force is what allows you, in addition to knowledge, that's the only thing that helps you take the car at its maximum speed, is go as fast as I can and slow down if I feel G-forces, and I can take the car pretty close to its limit. In an F1 car, you're going to feel G-forces because the car's capabilities are so insane. It's how much G-forces do you feel?
It's just like playing, because I've played Gran Turismo with actual, like, not great controllers, but with, pedal and brake and steering wheel.
Yep.
And driving around a corner, the car will suddenly spin out. Even at, reasonable speeds, just because I can't feel where the limit is.
Yep, it's like I'll be going 60 miles an hour and I'll turn the wheel, and from the sensation of speed I get from my eyeballs looking at the track on the screen, it feels to me like I'm going to make it around the turn. But without the ability to feel that, oh shit, there's a lot of G-forces on my body, the car spins out on the screen and I just go, what the fuck, and I'm frustrated. Whereas if I was in that car for real, on that track for real, I would have felt the traction being lost in my ass through the seat, and I wouldn't have spun out in the first place.
Yep. I mean, because especially growing up just in Michigan and then in Rochester and always driving in snow and ice all the time, my car, I lose traction pretty often. And I think
Not since getting new tires, I haven't.
It's probably the best example that I have many times in my life oversteered or understeered in the winter or in rain. Going fast on the freeway, taking
Often
a turn.
on purpose.
Yes, but that's beside the point. But it's happened, it happens because there's ice or whatever. And in video games, when that happens, 9 times out of 10, I crash because I can't feel how to correct. But in the real world, even if I'm going really, really fast, if I suddenly lose traction in the rear end and I'm, oversteering, I can correct without even blinking because I feel it. Just like you just feel and you correct and it works. But in a video game where it should be easier, it's a lot harder because I can't feel it.
Yep. And this is why I think that, racing games in general, like, virtual racing, which lets you feel it through the steering wheel, or Initial D, which you don't feel it, but it doesn't matter because, the game is not so realistic.
The game kind of does a lot of corrections for you.
And
it's
F-Zero,
like, he knows the idea. Let's make him get around the corner.
And F-Zero, which is, not even close to real-world cars. I mean, you have a hover car going 2,000 kilometers an hour.
Or in stunts, where I go through a 100-foot-tall loop in my F1 car and then hit a 45-degree ramp and jump over a windmill.
In all those games, I think that's why I find those racing games to be more enjoyable than the admittedly technologically superior Forzas and Gran Turismos, because while realism is cool and all, it's not fun if they're missing the essential component of the realism. Even if the graphics were half as good and the car's physics were shittier, if I could feel it, those games would be 10 times better than they are.
I think this is why Scott and I really want to get into, pretty much now it's just a matter of time. We don't have time to do it at all, and there isn't enough nearby. We really want to get into go-kart racing.
Yeah, go-kart racing's cool.
I feel like even like the crappiest, like the bottom rung of go-kart racing. I'm not talking like you go to Jillian's and race the go-karts or the slick karts, but one step up from that, as in...
Some guys have a club. Everyone makes a go-kart or buys a go-kart and then races it.
I think the line is, because I've been in real go-karts before in Canada and places where... Or the one time in Wildwood where they let us go in the rain.
That was good times.
If you get to the point where if you can hold the gas pedal down the whole way around the track, it's nothing.
Yeah, like if you go to the go-karts at the local amusement center, you can hold the gas pedal down the whole time, and as long as you steer with the steering wheel, right, and you pay attention, you will not spin out because the car has been limited to go at such a speed that even at max speed of that go-kart, you will make it around every single turn without losing control.
But if you do go-karts, if you find them if you haven't ever, do go-karts where you have to slow down or you'll crash or spin out. It's better than any video game, and And then
you're actually racing. I mean, it won't it'll actually, matter how you control the vehicle.
Because I remember the first time I did it, I was with my family in Canada, and we saw this go-kart place. My brother and I convinced my parents to pull over, and they're thinking, go-karts, whatever. Why do you want to simulate driving? Driving's boring. And go-karts are stupid. And then we get there, and we discovered that the go-karts go 50 miles an hour.
Yep. And you gotta wear a helmet.
And I gotta wear a helmet.
And you gotta
and
sign a waiver.
Suit, and good God, did I suddenly become interested in car racing like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And it's only in Canada where there's not as much liability as the US.
Well, there's a lot in the US too. It's just I don't have time. That's really the only thing stopping me. We've looked into it. It's not that expensive to get into. A lot of people are into it all over this country.
Still, I'd have to do all kinds of mechanic stuff. Even though it's a simple, like a lawnmower engine, I still...
Not so much. You can rent cars and you can join clubs where they provide cars or where everyone uses the exact same car.
Yeah, I know. But the problem with that, though, is like, I remember reading this story about a guy who went ski doing, right? With like a bunch of people from work or something, right?
Yeah.
And basically he goes down there and all these guys had their own Sea-Doos or, wave runners, whatever you want to call them. and he rented one, and it was basically everyone else was like, woo, and he was in the jalopy like, oh.
Well, I have seen clubs where everyone, like, they'll have a mechanic who maintains them, and everyone basically has the exact same car. That way there is never, ever any argument as to who is the better driver.
Yeah,
Because it just comes down to you've all got the same car.
yeah,
who
I mean, a lot of
wins?
people, pretty much a lot of the F1 drivers you see now, like, I don't think Scott Speed is still racing, but I can't even think of a single name, but
Kimi Räikkönen.
no, well, he might have, but a lot of those people, they started out in their youth riding go-karts. Like, Scott Speed was like a 10-year-old kid
look
riding
at what
go-karts.
F1
Still
racing
drives
is.
in go-karts.
F1 is a lot more like a go-kart than like any other kind of racing.
Oh,
It's
it's like a go-kart with a jet engine, basically.
It's a really fast go-kart, but I mean, if you watch them in slow motion and watch like the way they move and the way they take corners, slow motion is just like watching kids in a go-kart race.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just little turns, little turn, big turn, little turn.
Yep.
All right, I think we've gone on long enough. We like racing games, but we like real
Racing games
more.
are cool. If you Virtual Racing is the best one. I forgot it though, which is sad, but now I remember it, which is awesome.
Ridge Racer 1 is the bomb if you can find it somewhere.
It's not bad.
Other Ridge Racers are good.
Not only is Virtual Racing the best one, but pretty much everything you have in racing games today came from Virtual Racing. It pretty much invented every fundamental, aspect of modern racing games, and not much has changed since then.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.